Okay, hopefully everybody was able to get a refill on water or coffee. We'd like to now welcome Setareh, who is a lupus patient and a longtime volunteer and friend of LFNC. Setareh has her master's degree in integrative health by turning around her own, by turning around her own health through healthy lifestyle practices. She became fascinated by what patients with autoimmune disease could do to help themselves. She's the founder of Setareh Health, where she coaches clients with chronic diseases one-on-one to help them make healthier behavioral changes to improve their health and overall well-being. Setareh, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for welcoming me into this space, and thank you to LFNC for all you do to help the lupus community. So the topic of our talk today is optimizing health through anti-inflammatory eating and kidney-friendly nutrition. A little bit about myself. I was diagnosed with lupus in 2001. I was 18 years old at the time, and the whole diagnosis was very overwhelming. I hear a lot of people with lupus say, I feel like I've had lupus my whole life. But for me, I was pretty healthy my whole life. And the sickness came on very quickly and very intense, which was really overwhelming. I was exhausted all the time. I had a lot of joint pain, and I was suffering from brain fog. And on top of that, my kidneys were in bad shape. So I had to see so many different specialists. And I remember that the one question I would always ask is, what can I do to help myself? The doctors didn't have a lot of answers for me at the time, other than I should take my medications, I should avoid the sun, and I should rest as much as I could. And this is what started me on my own journey to find answers and to experiment on myself to see what would help me to feel better. My hope today is to share what I've learned along the way through my graduate school training, reading lots of studies about diet and lupus. This is what I did my graduate thesis on, and reading a lot of books, and really experimenting on myself, as I said. I could say today that the factor that has made the largest impact on my symptoms has been changing my diet. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this information and arming you with the right tools to start to feel better. If possible, please grab a pencil or a pen and some paper to take notes, as I believe the information that I'm about to share has the potential to help you to gain more energy and live with less pain on a daily basis. To start out, I want to share a little bit about the mechanism of why lupus causes inflammation in our bodies. As we know, lupus is an autoimmune disease where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks its own tissues. This can lead to widespread inflammation and tissue damage in various parts of the body. Here's how lupus causes inflammation. In lupus, the immune system loses the ability to distinguish between foreign invaders like bacteria and viruses and the body's own cells and tissues. This immune system malfunction causes the immune system to produce autoantibodies, antibodies that mistakenly target and react with a person's own tissues. The autoantibodies attack various tissues throughout the body, and this could include the skin, the joints, the kidneys, the brain, the heart, and the lungs. Common autoantibodies in lupus that you may be familiar with include anti-nuclear antibodies, or ANA. You've probably seen your doctor test for these, and anti-double-stranded DNA antibodies. The antibodies bind to antigens, which are proteins in the body, and they form immune complexes. These immune complexes circulate in the bloodstream, and then they deposit themselves in various tissues and organs throughout the body. The deposition of the immune complexes triggers an inflammatory response. So the body's immune cells, like macrophages and neutrophils, are attracted to the site of where they're deposited, and they release inflammatory mediators such as cytokines and chemokines. The prolonged and uncontrolled inflammation leads to tissue damage. So how does lupus affect the body? So yeah, on the skin, it causes rashes. And as Emmett mentioned, the very familiar butterfly rash, but it could be rashes throughout the body as well. In the joints, it causes pain, swelling, and stiffness. In the kidneys, it causes lupus nephritis, and it leads to kidney inflammation and potentially to kidney failure. In the brain and nervous system, it leads to headaches, seizures, and cognitive dysfunction. In the heart and lungs, it leads to pericarditis, which is inflammation of the heart lining, or pleuritis, which is inflammation of the lung lining. Notice that any of these conditions that end with the word itis refers to inflammation in that particular tissue of the body. And then, of course, there are the more subtle or not so subtle ways that inflammation can show up in the body, which include the following: body pain, fatigue, trouble sleeping, depression, anxiety, digestive problems, frequent infections, weight gain, or weight loss. So by now we've determined that the lupus disease process itself is a major contributor to inflammation. And I want to take us back to the question that I asked all my doctors when I was diagnosed with lupus, which is, what can I do? And the first section of my presentation describes an anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle. And it helps answer that question of what we can do on a day-to-day basis to help ourselves. Emmett talked about self-care. So the way we eat and the way we live is a big part of our self-care. So I'm going to elaborate about this here. Several foods are known to cause inflammation in the body due to various components they contain. I want to take you through some of the top foods and the reasons why they lead to inflammation. The first one, as you may have heard or know, is sugar, or high fructose corn syrup. High sugar intake can lead to increased production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Excessive fructose, particularly from high fructose corn syrup, can lead to insulin resistance and increased fat in the liver, and this promotes inflammation in the body. The second one is refined carbohydrates. So foods like white bread, pastries, other processed carbohydrates, these are all quickly digested in the body, and what they do is they cause our blood sugar to spike and our insulin levels to spike as well. So when this happens, it leads to the production of something called AGE, advanced glycation end products. And so what they do is they trigger inflammation in the body. Processed snack foods is number 3. So things like chips, crackers, other processed snacks, basically anything that comes in a package and is carbohydrate based. These are full of not only carbohydrates, but trans fats and artificial additives. All of these things have been shown to cause inflammation in the body. Trans fat is found in many processed foods in order to increase their shelf life. Trans fats increase the level of inflammatory markers in the body, and they're known to contribute to systemic inflammation. And they've also been linked to various chronic conditions other than lupus. Vegetable and seed oils is another one. So oils like soybean, corn, and sunflower oil are very high in something called omega-6 fatty acids. And while the body needs some omega-6 fatty acids, most of us have an imbalance of omega-6 and omega-3, and these need to be in a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio in the body in order for our immune system to work properly and for inflammation to stay in check. Processed and red meats is number 5. So these meats contain high levels of saturated fats and can produce AGEs, which I talked about before. So when these foods are cooked at high temperatures, it can cause carcinogens, which are pro-inflammatory in the body as well. Next, I want to talk about a condition called leaky gut syndrome, which many people with autoimmune conditions are known to have. Leaky gut is a condition in which the lining of the small intestines becomes damaged, and it causes and allows undigested food particles, toxins, and bacteria to leak through the intestinal barrier and to flood the bloodstream. So when these foreign substances enter the bloodstream, they can get lodged in an organ or a joint. And what they do is they cause an inflammatory reaction in the body. There are certain proteins in foods that I'm about to mention that in our bodies mimic those of our natural tissues. This is called molecular mimicry. And this can set off an immune response where our body's own tissues are being mistakenly attacked. And the following foods are the main foods that people with autoimmune disease like lupus can have sensitivity to, and that can cause additional inflammation in the body. And those are gluten, casein, and dairy, and soy. Gluten is very common for individuals with autoimmune disease to be sensitive or intolerant to. So gluten is found in wheat, barley, rye, in sourdough bread, things like pasta, beer, cakes, pies. And you can have a sensitivity or an intolerance to these things without having celiac disease. I think that that can be a big misconception where people say, well, I don't have celiac, so these things are not a problem for me, but they can be causing inflammation and an immune reaction. I want to share a story that happened to me recently. I've been avoiding gluten for the last 5 years. And of course, that limits me from eating a lot of things at the menu, on a menu at a regular restaurant. So I was really excited when my family and I went to an Italian restaurant and we had an option for a gluten-free pasta on the menu that can be substituted for any of their regular pastas that they have. And I ordered one of their pesto pastas with tomatoes and fresh spinach and specified that I wanted the gluten-free pasta. So when the food runner brought out the pasta, I started happily eating it. And I was commenting to my husband how delicious it was. And when the waiter came out a few minutes later to check on us, he realized that he had given us the restaurant had given us the pasta that had the gluten in it and not the gluten-free pasta. And I looked down, and at that point, I had already eaten about a third of, what was on my plate. And so he promptly took my dish and took it to the kitchen to get me a replacement. And I was like, oh, well, what can I do, right? I ate it. I forgot about the whole thing. But when I woke up the next day, I was having pain in my left knee, and all the fingers in my right hand were swollen and tender. Now, I don't usually have pain, and I don't have joint swelling on a day-to-day basis. This is something that was new to me. And so I remembered that I had eaten the pasta the day before. And so this is how severe and how quick gluten affects my body. And this is exactly why I have chosen to stay away from it. The second thing is dairy, but particularly there's a protein in dairy called casein. And similar to gluten, dairy can contribute to leaky gut, which I described earlier, as well as it can trigger the body's immune system. This is because the proteins in dairy can resemble the body's own proteins. So a lot of people with autoimmune diseases will find that they are sensitive to dairy. Not everybody, but this is something to be aware of as well. And the final one is soy, which has similar issues contributing to leaky gut. But in addition to that, soy has phytoestrogens, which are plant-based compounds which mimic estrogen in the body. The extra hormonal activities can exacerbate autoimmune conditions. And in addition, many people are sensitive, if not allergic, to soy. For this reason, diets that avoid soy gluten and dairy are the least inflammatory for the most part for people that have autoimmune disease. The best way to know if the foods I mention here are exasperating your systems is to do your symptoms, excuse me, is to do what's called an elimination diet. So in an elimination diet, you remove gluten, dairy, and soy for a period of about 3 to 6 weeks. It's just a temporary thing that you do. You can also remove any other foods that you suspect you may be sensitive to, things like nightshades, so like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. Some people are sensitive to that as well. And then you simply notice how you feel. You can keep a journal and report every day how's your joint pain? Has it improved? How is your energy? How is your mental clarity? And then you start to reintroduce the foods one by one. So you could start by adding back in the food that you're missing the most. Maybe it's like bread. Add it back in and then see how you feel. Or did your symptoms come back? Or is it the same? You wait about 3 days and then you introduce the next food. Maybe it's dairy. And then wait a few days, introduce the next food. And although it's not easy to be on elimination diet for that short period of time, the process can really help you determine if the foods that you're eating on a regular basis are contributing to your symptoms. And with that knowledge comes power, and you can make changes. Thankfully, these days, there are alternatives for everything, and they're widely available in supermarkets and even in restaurants as well. So with that, I want to mention a peer-reviewed published study that was conducted in 2022, which illustrates a lot of what I just shared. The study surveyed 420 lupus patients, and it reviewed the dietary changes that improve symptom severity. So symptom severity was characterized as joint and muscle pain, fatigue, sleep issues, nausea, skin rashes, and lesions. In summary, the study found out that cutting out dairy led to a 27% decrease in symptom severity and a 54% decrease in fatigue. Cutting out dairy and meat together led to a 26% decrease in symptom severity and a 63% decrease in fatigue. As many of you can attest to, fatigue seems to be one of our top issues with lupus. Eliminating processed foods led to a 26% decrease in symptom severity. So I thought that the results of this were pretty amazing, and really show that making some changes to our diet can really affect how we feel on a day-to-day basis. According to the findings of the study, I just mentioned the readings that I have done over the years by doctors who specialize in nutrition for autoimmune diseases, as well as my own experience experimenting with diet. I've concluded that a whole food, plant-rich diet, which avoids gluten, soy, and dairy, is the healthiest diet for lupus with patients, or with lupus patients, or at least it is for myself. This is a diet that includes a wide variety of fruit, vegetables, gluten-free whole grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes, and foods that are minimally processed or don't come in a package, or if they do come in a package, they contain less than 3 ingredients. In addition, there are several foods that have been found to have the ability to lower inflammation in the body. So the first one is berries. So berries are rich in antioxidants called anthocyanins, which have anti-inflammatory effects. They also contain vitamins and fiber, and they promote overall health in the body. The second is leafy greens, so things like spinach, kale, Swiss chard. And leafy greens are packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. They are particularly high in vitamin K, which has been shown to have anti-inflammatory properties. The third is nuts, and especially nuts like walnuts and almonds, which are rich in healthy fats, fiber, and antioxidants. Walnuts in particular contain a high amount of alpha-linolenic acid, which is a type of omega-3, and magnesium, both of which have been found to lower inflammation. Number 4 is fatty fish. So this is found in salmon, mackerel, and sardines. And these fish are high in essential omega-3 fatty acids, which have been shown to reduce inflammation. Omega-3s help to reduce the production of inflammatory cytokines in the body. Olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil is a staple of the Mediterranean diet, and that's why it's been found that this diet is so heart healthy. It's rich in monounsaturated fats and antioxidants, such as oleocanthal, which has similar anti-inflammatory effects to ibuprofen. Number 6 is turmeric. Turmeric contains curcumin, a powerful anti-inflammatory compound. It can help to reduce inflammation and provide relief from inflammatory conditions. Green tea contains something called EGCG, and it's a powerful antioxidant, and it reduces inflammation, and it protects the cells from damage as well. Cherries, especially tart cherries, are rich in antioxidants and have been shown to reduce the levels of anti-inflammatory markers in the blood. Ginger contains bioactive compounds that have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. It can help to reduce inflammation and improve symptoms of inflammatory conditions. So incorporating these foods in your diet can help lower inflammation and improve your overall health. In addition to the foods we eat, we can live our day-to-day lives in a way that helps us manage and reduce inflammation in the body. Here are the main components of an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Exercise has an anti-inflammatory effect on the body, and it's been found that exercising just 20 minutes per day is enough to reduce inflammation. Depending on where you're at in the course of your illness, the exercise may sound really difficult or even impossible. And if that's the case, I invite you to first just focus on movement, making sure that you're moving your body in ways that feel good to you every day. We know that exercise is good for us, and many of us experience fatigue. Exercise can actually have an effect on helping us to have more energy. In addition, it prevents heart disease, diabetes, depression, anxiety, and mood issues that a lot of people with lupus have, and it also promotes better sleep. Exploring different types of movement to see what you enjoy. I believe that the things that you are consistent with are going to be the things that you enjoy doing, whether that's walking in nature, just working around the house. Believe it or not, just housework is good for our cardiovascular system and is considered a form of exercise. Gardening is something a lot of people enjoy, getting their hands in the dirt and being outside, playing with kids or pets. The key is to really just get moving and not be sitting for prolonged periods of time as much as you can. The CDC recommends for everybody moderate exercise, 150 minutes per week, and 2 total body strength training sessions. So we know that strength training is also really important for the bones and the muscles and our overall health and well-being. It's been confirmed that lupus is a stress-related disease, and many of us can trace our flares back to stressful periods in our lives or to a traumatic experience. And while stress is an inevitable part of life, there are activities that we can do on a consistent and regular basis to release stress and help our bodies to get a more to to get into a more optimal state for healing. So these include things like meditation, creating a meditation practice. It doesn't have to be long. It can be quite short, actually, maybe 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day is enough to have an impact. Deep breathing, so you can Google it. There are a lot of different deep breathing exercises online that you can practice and experience that your nervous system really calms down when you're able to change the way that you breathe. Journaling, just getting your thoughts down on paper can be really therapeutic for a lot of people. Practicing yoga. So this doesn't always have to include going to a class or a studio. There are a lot of really good videos on YouTube that you can follow. And one that I love is Yoga with Adriene. Tons of free videos, and a lot of them are like 20 minutes and pretty easy to incorporate into your day and into your routine. Another big one is spending time in nature. And this is something that a lot of us have gotten away from in our modern lives, spending a lot of time indoors or in front of a computer. Being outside and being in nature is so therapeutic. And there's a big body of evidence that shows that nature has a healing capacity for our bodies. Keeping a gratitude journal. So whether it's something that you maybe in the morning are jotting down 3 things you're grateful for, or before you go to bed at night, helps to wire your brain to appreciate the good in your life. And I love that Emmett, when we introduced ourselves, I said, "How are you?" And he said, "I'm blessed." And that's beautiful, like knowing that and, owning that about yourself and your life and appreciating all the good things that are there. And then, of course, spending time with loved ones. And I would say the caveat to that is spending time with loved ones that are also supportive of you and what you're going through in your lupus journey. That can be especially healing, to be in the presence of those who understand your journey. So we all know how important sleep is to our overall health, and I cannot emphasize enough how important the quantity and quality of sleep that you get each night is. Lack of sleep triggers inflammation in the body, and good quality sleep allows your body and mind to be replenished and restored. Sleep hygiene, if you've never heard that word, refers to practices and habits that are conducive to sleeping well on a regular basis. And good sleep hygiene can help you to fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and feel more rested during the day. Some suggestions for optimizing sleep hygiene and giving your body the best chance for a restorative night of sleep are keeping your bedroom dark, so using blackout shades or an eye mask if you need to, keeping it quiet, so if you need to, wearing earplugs, or if you live next to a busy street or there's people awake at night when you're trying to sleep, having something like a sound machine to kind of drown out the other sounds that come up. And keeping your room cool. So between about 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit is the optimal temperature for getting good sleep. Having a consistent sleep schedule. So going to sleep and waking up at the same time every day, even on the weekends, is really important for your body clock and your circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm refers to your body's natural 24-hour clock that triggers to your body when it's time to be awake and when it's time to sleep. And a lot of this is triggered by light. So optimizing light helps to balance your circadian rhythm. One good practice is when you wake up in the morning to open the window or even the best thing is to go outside for a few minutes, because that natural light coming into your eyes signals to your body that it's time to be awake and alert for the day. Conversely, towards the end of the day, when the sun is going down, you want to turn down the lights in the house to signal to your body to produce melatonin, which helps you to relax and to sleep at night. Electronics get in the way of this a lot, because a lot of us are watching TV at night, or we're on our iPads or our iPhones or any type of phone really before we're going to bed. So a good rule of thumb for sleep hygiene is to turn off the electronics 1 to 2 hours before bed. And one thing that I try to get my clients to do, especially if they're having a hard time sleeping, is to put the phone charger in a separate room, so that so it's not next to them. If they wake up in the middle of the night, they're not tempted to look at the phone or to check emails really quick. And just 1 to 2 hours before bed, putting that phone in the other room, and giving yourself a break from the phone. Another one is cutting caffeine after 12 p.m. So caffeine has a tendency to stay in our system and to keep us alert later into the day. So when you cut the caffeine off at 12, then you know that you can start setting your body up to wind down towards the latter half of the day. Reducing large or late meals is another big one. So we all know how it feels to have a big meal close to bedtime, and you're trying to sleep, and you just, you feel that food in your stomach, and it does impede and get in the way of being able to sleep well. Alcohol is one that I think it's a big myth for a lot of people, because they'll say, oh, I had to have a glass of red wine and it helps me to relax and to sleep at night. What's actually been found through a lot of studies is that having alcohol late in the night, although it might help you to fall asleep, or you might be able to fall asleep easily, there will be more instances in the night where you are waking up. So your sleep is more interrupted when you're having alcohol. So good hygiene, sleep hygiene, I want to mention that it's completely within your control. There might be a lot of factors about sleep that are not within your control, where people will have like restless leg syndrome, or they'll have sleep apnea, or if they have, depression, then that's also contributing to poor sleep. But sleep hygiene basically are practices that you can implement to set yourself up to have the best possible chance of sleeping well that night. And now I want to move on to the last part of our presentation, and I want to focus on a topic that is relevant for many of us who have lupus, who have also developed kidney disease. The topic is kidney-friendly nutrition and how to eat in order to optimize your kidney health. So let's start with the question of how lupus affects your kidneys. So your kidneys filter waste and extra water out of your blood to make urine. They also help control your blood pressure, and they keep the right balance of salt, acids, and minerals in your body. Lupus can cause a disease called lupus nephritis, and lupus nephritis, again, that word itis, is inflammation of the kidneys that can make them stop working well. And when the kidneys aren't working well, we can get an accumulation of waste in the blood and extra water that accumulates in the body. In the early stages of lupus nephritis, you might not notice any symptoms at all. And this is why it's so important to have your kidneys checked on a regular basis with your doctor if you have lupus. As kidney disease progresses, there are symptoms to watch out for. So these are things like swelling, usually in the feet, the ankles, the legs, or in the face, foamy urine, which we talked about. Developing high blood pressure is also a symptom of kidney disease, and then peeing more often than usual. So if you're getting up several times in the night to pee, that is something to be aware of as well. And there are many different types of tests that can help you and your doctor to diagnose kidney problems. So these include urine tests, where the lab checks for blood and protein in your urine. And it's just, you pee in a cup and they just do like a stick test, and then they can find and let you know if you have protein or blood in the urine. And then there are blood tests that are done to check how well your kidneys are filtering out waste from your blood. And a kidney biopsy is the one that's a little bit more invasive, but it gives your doctors good information about the amount of inflammation and the amount of scarring in your tissues. And when this is determined, they can figure out the best possible course of action in terms of your treatment, and also in deciding helping you to determine what diet would best help you if you have kidney disease. And so your physician or registered dietitian is the best person to tell you more specific information about your particular type of kidney disease and what you need to be aware of in your diet. But I'm just providing here some general guidelines to be aware of. The first mineral that you want to make sure you don't get too much of is sodium, or table salt. So sodium affects your blood pressure. It also helps to maintain the water balance in your body. Healthy kidneys help keep sodium levels in balance. However, if you have kidney disease, extra sodium and fluids can accumulate in your body. This can cause a number of problems like swollen ankles, high blood pressure, shortness of breath, and fluid buildup around your heart and your lungs. And for this reason, it's important to limit the amount of sodium you consume each day. Less than 2 grams of sodium in your daily diet is a good rule of thumb. It might even need to be less than that, depending on the severity of your kidney disease. And so here are some tips for reducing sodium in your diet. So the first one is avoiding packaged food. Anything that comes in a package is likely to have sodium, sugar, all types of other things in there. And a way to do this that I like to share with patients is to shop around the perimeter of the supermarket. So what's around the perimeter of the supermarket is the produce aisles, the lean, proteins and things like turkey or chicken breast. You have like your eggs. Some people do okay with dairy. And then some supermarkets have like bulk bins and things like that, where you can buy like, rice or beans. But generally in the perimeter of the supermarket, there is going to be less packaged food than in the inside aisles, you'll notice. Cooking at home is another big one. Anytime that you get food at a restaurant or fast food, it's going to have a ton of sodium in it. So as much as you can, learning how to cook your foods at home. And avoiding high sodium seasonings. So seasonings that have a lot of sodium are soy sauce, sea salt. Some people think sea salt is better than regular table salt, and it's actually just the same in terms of the sodium content. The only difference is that it's less refined, so less processed than table salt. And then garlic salt is a seasoning that a lot of people, including myself, love to use on like vegetables or other things. And that also has that high sodium content. Reading labels when shopping. So as you'll see on the right, sodium is always listed. So you'll know how much sodium is in your food. And then rinsing canned foods with water before serving is a good rule of thumb. So if you are eating a food from a can, just putting it in like a strainer and rinsing all the sodium out of it. Cutting down on protein. So since our kidneys get rid of waste from the protein we eat, eating too much protein can be taxing on the kidneys. So again, it's important to talk with your doctor or dietitian about the right amount of protein for you, as getting too much can be problemsome for your kidneys, or getting too little can also be a problem. In general, the standard American diet has too much protein. And so I've listed some tips for helping regulate the amount of protein consumed. So eating more plant-based proteins like beans, nuts, seeds, lentils, and quinoa. So these foods have smaller amounts of protein in them than meat. And choosing these plant-based proteins in place of animal meat can really lower the workload on your kidneys. So think of veggies and grains as the main part of your meal. So as you'll see, this is a healthy eating plate from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine that I like to share with the patients that I coach. You'll see that the half the plate is vegetables and fruits. A lot of people think of meat as being the main portion of their meals. And this diagram shows that really the vegetables should be the main portion of your meal. So things like leafy greens, carrots, vegetables that have more water like cucumbers, onions, red bell peppers, yellow bell peppers. These are all really great. And then you'll notice that a quarter of the plate is going to be your plant proteins. So things like lentils, garbanzo beans, edamame. Some people can tolerate tofu, you can tolerate soy, and then nuts and things like that. And this may also be if you do eat like fish or chicken, it can be there as well. And then you have your whole grains as the other quarter. So replacing half the meat in your tacos, your wraps, or sandwiches with veggies is really a helpful way to make sure that you're not overdoing it on the meat in your diet. And then phosphorus and potassium are two additional minerals that you may want to speak to your doctor about the need to limit if you have severe kidney disease. If you do need to limit phosphorus, start by, again, increasing your intake of fruit and vegetables. You might be noticing a trend here, since these foods are naturally low in phosphorus. And some foods you should limit are dairy and cheese, fast food, packaged food, and also you can read labels for phosphorus and avoid foods that contain it. Potassium is an important mineral found in the body, and it's also responsible for many functions. But people living with kidney disease are at risk for having potassium levels outside the normal range. So to keep your potassium levels in the goal range, you need to watch how much potassium you're eating throughout the day. If you have high potassium, which is called hyperkalemia, your healthcare provider can advise you to limit certain things that are higher in potassium. If you have low potassium, hypokalemia, you may be advised the opposite, to increase the amount of potassium in your diet. Again, remember that every person with kidney disease is different, so it's important to speak to your doctor or registered dietitian to determine a kidney-friendly diet that's right for you. You can also find a comprehensive list of foods that are high and low in potassium by visiting a website called kidney.org and searching on there for what they call the A to Z list. Again, I want to thank you so much for your time and attention. I welcome any questions about any of the topics we covered today, or even if there's something that we didn't cover that you want to talk about. If it feels more comfortable for you to reach out to me one-on-one, I encourage you to email me or send me a message through my website, which is listed here, setarehhealth.com.
Thank you, Setareh, for your presentation. You know, your slides were great, but your comments and input truly brought life to them. I learned a lot. And actually, while I'm blessed to not have lupus, I learned a ton about self-help, healthy lifestyles from both of you. So thank you, Setareh and Emmett, a lot. Now we're going to open the Q&A portion of the event. We're going to begin with the questions that were asked during the presentation, and we've got a few of them. But feel free to ask additional questions while we're talking, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. And again, if we can't get through them, we'll email you the answers. So let's get started with a couple of questions that have come in. And I think that this is what I want to start with. Do you have any general dietary recommendations or resource suggestions for patients suffering from chronic pain due to lupus?
Hmm, that is a great question. No, but let me look into that. Can I look into it and get back to you?
Yes, I'll make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share that the thing that's helped me is gluten has been the big one. Just cutting that from my diet has really decreased my pain. If you're talking particularly about like joint or muscle pain, I encourage you to just try cutting it out of your diet for a couple weeks and see if that helps in any way. As I shared the story of me eating the pasta with the gluten at the restaurant, and the next day I'm having all this pain and I'm not used to having pain. And if I wouldn't have known that I have this gluten intolerance, I would have just thought that this was a normal part of having lupus for me. Which it's really not. It's just if I am able to stay away from the gluten, then I don't have as much pain. But I will look into chronic pain, and if there are any resources, things like books, or maybe people who are speaking out about chronic pain on lupus, and I will get that to you.
Thank you. This is an interesting question. There's a concern in live bacteria from probiotics that might trigger lupus. Do you recommend lupus patients take probiotics?
I don't recommend any supplements. It's not within my scope of practice as a health coach. I think the best thing to do if you're considering that or you think it might be helpful for you is to speak with your doctor about it. There are a lot of food sources of like probiotic foods, like things like kimchi or sauerkraut, or I'll do like a lot of pickled vegetables, even kefir that's made with water. It's a dairy-free version of it. And that seems to be okay for a lot of patients. But in terms of the recommendation for supplements, I would definitely just check with your doctor about that.
Lot of eating questions. So this one is back on your cut down protein slide. I think that was like
Mm,
slide 23 or so. You,
yes.
you mentioned replacing meat in tacos or wraps or sandwiches with veggies. How about with fish?
Yeah, a lot of people do fine with fish. Again, like if you're having like a salmon or something like that, maybe just trying to not have as much if you've been advised that you need to reduce protein because of your kidney function. I think Emmett mentioned like if he has, the steak one day, then he just won't have it for several days after, or even 2 weeks after that. Or something you could do is maybe eat half of it and then save the other half for like the next day. It really just depends on what your target is in terms of the amount of protein that is safe for you and your kidneys.
And another diet question. Do you recommend the keto diet for lupus patients?
I think the keto diet is hard to follow on a long-term basis because it really drastically cuts carbohydrates and it's high in fat. I like the part of it that is really rich in like vegetables. Um, I don't necessarily recommend it for lupus patients. I think that we need carbs in our diet. And if we're able to stick to whole grains and carbs that are healthy, then they're a healthy part of a regular diet.
And then the last question that's come in, you talked a lot about sleep and how you prepare yourself for the next day, and part of it was a loving relationship. what's considered a stressful relationship in terms of lupus and how that might trigger lupus?
Yeah. So I read when I was writing my graduate thesis, I read a lot of studies about supportive relationships. And those are the relationships in which when you're living with a chronic disease, it was specific to lupus, but when you're living with a chronic disease, you have to have people in your life that either understand your condition or are supportive of you and the symptoms that you're going through. They don't try to diminish what you're going through or say, oh, you're over exaggerating or you're a hypochondriac. The studies found that those type of relationships can actually be more detrimental to our health. And so that's why I made sure to differentiate that it's not just relationships, it's the relationships that are supportive. And when I came to find the Lupus Foundation, and I found that through Sandra's support group, the Lupus support group, I saw people for the first time that truly understood what I was going through. The symptoms that I was having, they're all nodding their heads and saying, yes, I go through that too. And I think even with the most well-intentioned people in my life who loved me and cared for me, for some of them, it was really hard for them to understand. And so that's why I encourage you to cultivate and really grow those relationships with the people in your life who take the time and the energy to understand what it's like to live with an invisible illness on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said an invisible illness.
Mhm.
Both you and Emmett look incredibly healthy,
Mm.
vibrant actually, and yet, you do have flare-ups, and I know that my daughter has lupus, and she, like you, looks incredibly vibrant.
Yeah.
It's difficult for her because when she feels bad, others don't know why. And so that is a tough one. So relationships are extraordinarily important. So thank you for that.
Yes, of course.
So that was the last question. I'm going to leave it open for a second to see if there's any more coming in. Okay, I don't see any more coming in. So thanks again to both you, Setareh, and Emmett, and to all of our attendees today. I hope you learned as much as I did. And if you want to rewatch today's presentation, it's going to be available on demand next week. We'll send you an email with the link. We're also going to be sending you a short survey via email, so please take a minute to answer the questions because your valuable feedback will help us find topics which are interesting to you and provide information on how the conferences can be improved. For additional resources or questions, please visit our website at lfnc.org or email us at communications@lfnc.org. So I hope you all had a good day today and that you'll join us for other lupus health conferences this year, especially coming up at the end of this month. Watch our social media and our website or your emails for more information. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.